We are losing somewhere between 70 and 88% of our children by the end of their freshman year in college. That's the children of evangelicals. Somewhere between 70 and 88% of them have nothing to do with spiritual things by the end of their freshman year in college. Now, let me give you the easy answer before we go into a more detailed answer. The easy answer is this. If we continue to send our children to Caesar for their education, we need to stop being surprised when they come home as Romans. How to see who controls the schools, control the world. Luke chapter 6 and verse 40. A pupil is not above his teacher, but everyone, after he has been fully trained, will be like his teacher. This is the New Testament version of Proverbs 22:6. Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. The New Testament version of that is right here in front of you. Luke chapter 6 and verse 40. A pupil is not above his teacher, but everyone, after he has been fully trained, will be like his teacher. It's simple. It makes sense. Whoever's your teacher is your discipler. You cannot separate education and discipleship. Whoever is educating our children is discipling our children, which means whoever educates the majority of children is discipling the majority of children. And if the pupil is not above his teacher, and if everyone will ultimately be like his teacher, you see the power of education. From K through 12, children spend 14,000 seat hours in school. Let me say that again, 14,000 seat hours in school. The average Christian family spends less than 30 minutes per week discussing spiritual matters. Parents who think that a few conversations centered around what did you learn today need to be honest about the usual answer to that question, which is nothing. I hear this all the time. Yes, I understand. And after they go through the regular, rigmarole of our schools are different. That's everybody, by the way. Doesn't matter where they're from, doesn't matter who they are. Their schools are different. Every other school in the United States is having those issues, but our school is different. After we get past that, here's the next thing. Well, I send them there, but we make sure and talk through things when they come home. Really? Let's be honest. When they come home and you ask them what they learned so that you can talk through it, what's their response when you say, what'd you learn at school today? The response is, nothing. The fact of the matter is they don't know what they learned at school. They have no idea what's being shoved down their throat. It is their normal. They have no concept of anything else. So they don't know what to discuss. Currently, the curriculum in schools is controlled by the government and teachers' unions. Who are we kidding? There's not enough time in the day to compete with the schools for the minds of our children. The Bible and education. Is the text silent? Because for a long time, this has been our attitude on the issue. Our attitude on the issue is, hey, just leave me alone. You do what you feel led to do. I'll do what I feel led to do. Well, excuse me if I don't buy into that mysticism. I do what the Bible commands me to do, okay? It's like saying, hey, there's a beautiful woman over there. I'm standing here with a married friend. There's a beautiful woman over there. She's giving us the eye. Hey, you do what you feel led to do. I'll do what I feel led to do. No, the Bible has spoken on the adultery issue. I believe the Bible has also spoken on the education issue. And for so long, we've treated this like some sort of mystical decision that parents have to make where we meditate, until God zaps us with what we're to do with our children educationally. Now, before we look at all these, let me admit something to you. The word school doesn't exist in any one of these. And there's a reason. The Bible knows nothing of such things. But let's look at what it says about the training of the mind. Deuteronomy 6 and 7. These words which I'm commanding you today shall be on your hearts. You shall teach them diligently to your sons, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. That would be all the time. I had an administrator in a school system in Amarillo, Texas, challenge me on this issue because she's committed to public schools, committed to government education as a Christian. She's committed to it. We got to have it, and our kids have got to be there. And I mentioned this passage of scripture, to which she responded, I always thought that meant non-school hours. Ma'am, where, pray tell, was Moses sending his kids to school? Listen to Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates when? Day and night. He will be like the tree firmly planted by the streams of water, which yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. And in whatever he does, he prospers. The wicked are not so, but they are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Romans 12:2, listen to this. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. Look at 2 Corinthians 10:5. We are destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God. We are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. Colossians 2:8. See to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception, according to the tradition of men, according to the empty principles of the world, rather than according to Christ. Listen to this. 1 Timothy 6:20. O Timothy, guard what has been entrusted to you, avoiding worldly and empty chatter and the opposing arguments of what is falsely called knowledge, which some have professed and thus gone astray from the faith. Can we obey these principles without applying them to the way we educate our children? How can we do that, folks? How can we look at these principles about the training of the mind and not apply them to the way that we educate our children? As we look through this. But listen to this. Government education was established around 1870. I'm surprised at how many people don't know this. Modeled after the Prussian format, rooted in secular humanism. It was opposed by American Christians for decades. First 50 years, the church fought tooth and nail against compulsory education and against government education. Fought it tooth and nail. They knew better. As late as 1900, still 2/3 of all high school children were educated at home or the church. As late as 1900, still 2/3. Listen to this from Alexis de Tocqueville. As late as the 1830s, it was noted in America that education was everywhere in the hands of the Protestant clergy. Education is not mentioned in the United States Constitution, but guess what is? The 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. What does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. The federal government has no constitutional jurisdiction over education. People with a Christian worldview, 11 times less likely to condone adultery, 15 times less likely to believe homosexuality is acceptable, 18 times less likely to condone drunkenness, 31 times less likely to condone premarital cohabitation, and 100 times less likely to endorse abortion. What are we always pounding the pulpit about? This list. Why are we always pounding the pulpit about this list? Because people don't have a Christian worldview. If they had a Christian worldview, we'd be pounding the pulpit about something else. But because 90% of the people who call themselves Christians don't have a Christian worldview, we have to constantly remind them to act like what they are not. Nehemiah Institute has been conducting the Peers test for decades. It tests worldview. What does that test look like? Here's the breakdown of the scale of the Peers test. Anything from 70 to 100 is called biblical theism. That's what they would expect Bible scholars and professors to score. Moderate Christian worldview, 30 to 69 range. That's what they would expect mature Christians to score. You're a Christian, you have a Christian worldview, 30 to 69. Secular humanism, 0 to 29. Socialism, anything below 0. So, what do their test results look like? Biblical scholars average 87.8, just where you would expect, between the 70 to 100 range. Humanists average negative 45, just where you would expect. Christian school faculty, these are folks who teach in your average Christian school, high school. They average 52.9, again, where you would expect them between that 30 and 69 range. Homeschool students average 48.6, just behind Christian school faculty. Christian students in Christian schools average 27.8, which is just below the moderate Christian worldview, seeping into the secular human worldview. Now, what's the problem there? Here's the problem. It's not true with all Christian schools, but it boggles my mind. Christian schools actually brag about the fact that they have certified teachers. Certified by whom? The state, Caesar. So Christian schools are out there going, hey, Caesar approves of our teachers. Christian students in public school average 7.9 on the Peers test. The low end of secular humanism falling into Marxist socialism. I don't write the mail, I just deliver it. A couple of charts. Since 1988, 90% of Christian students who have taken the Peers test have scored below the moderate Christian worldview level. 90%. 90%. The children most likely to remain in the faith of their parents, those educated at home. We're currently losing 75 to 88%, between 70 and 88% of young people by the end of their freshman year in college. Homeschool students remain in the faith of their fathers all the way through college, according to NARI, at a rate of 90 to 95%. Again, I don't write the mail, I just deliver it.
So how would you educate your 5 boys?
Actually, I created a little school. Yeah.
What kind of school? Could you describe to us?
Sure. It's small. It's only got 14 kids now, and it'll have 20 kids in September. It's called Ad Astra, which means to the stars. That's maybe a bit different from most other schools, is that there aren't any grades. There's no like not grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 type of thing. Making all the children go in the same grade at the same time, like an assembly line.
I know.
Because some people love English or languages, some people love math, some people love music, and they have different abilities at different times. It makes more sense to cater the education to match their aptitudes and abilities. So I think that's one principle. Another is that it's important to teach problem solving, or teach to the problem, not to the tools. So this would be like, let's say you're trying to teach people about how engines work. Or, you could start by, a more traditional approach would be to say, well, we're going to teach you all about screwdrivers and wrenches, and you're going to have a course on screwdrivers, a course on wrenches, and all these things. And this is a very difficult way to do it. A much better way would be like, here's the engine, now let's take it apart. How are we going to take it apart? Oh, you need a screwdriver. That's what the screwdriver is for. You need a wrench. That's what the wrench is for. And then a very important thing happens, which is that the relevance of the tools becomes apparent.
So all your 5 boys are in that school?
Yes.
Until when? This is from
I don't know.
preschool
So far
to...
it's only 1-year-old. But they like it.
They like it?
Yeah.
And you want to keep them away from regular schools?
No, I just didn't see that the regular schools, they weren't doing the things that I thought should be done. Like, those 2 principles, they weren't adhering to those principles. So I thought, well, let's see what we can do. Maybe creating a school will be better. And I actually hired a teacher from the school they were at, who also agreed with me that there was a better way to do it.
Have they surprised you in a way of their innovative thinking?
Yeah, it seems to be going pretty well. The kids really love going to school. I think that's a good sign. I hated going to school when I was a kid. It was torture. So the fact that they actually think vacations are too long, like they want to go back to school.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
That's weird.
I know. But people are not objects on an assembly line. That's a ridiculous notion.
So what would you do if you had a free reign over education?
Generally, you want education to be like as close to a video game as possible, like a good video game. Like, you do not need to tell your kid to play video games. They will play video games on autopilot all day. So if you can make it interactive and engaging, then you can make education far more compelling and far easier to do. So you really want to disconnect the whole grade level thing from the subjects. Allow people to progress at the fastest pace that they can or are interested in each subject. It seems like a really obvious thing. I think like most teaching today is a lot like vaudeville, where and as a result, it's just not that compelling. It's like somebody standing up there and lecturing to you, and they've done the same lecture several years in a row. They're not necessarily all that engaged or in doing it.
Do you agree with Peter Thiel about the unnecessariness of university, higher education?
A university education is often unnecessary. That's not to say it's unnecessary for all people, but I think you probably learn about as much, or the vast majority of what you're going to learn there in the first 2 years, and most of it is from your classmates. There's no need even to have a college degree at all, or even high school. If somebody graduated from a great university, that may be an indication that they will be capable of great things, but it's not necessarily the case. If you look at, say, people like Bill Gates or Larry Ellison, Steve Jobs, these guys didn't graduate from college. But if you had a chance to hire them, of course, that would be a good idea. So, it's just looking just for evidence of exceptional ability. And if there's a track record of exceptional achievement, then it's likely that that will continue into the future. Well, first of all, you don't need college to learn stuff, okay? Everything is available basically for free. You can learn anything you want for free. It is not a question of learning. There is a value that colleges have, which is like, seeing whether can somebody work hard at something, including a bunch of sort of annoying homework assignments, and still do their homework assignments and kind of soldier through and get it done. That's like the main value of college. And then also, if you probably want to hang around with a bunch of people your own age for a while instead of going right into the workforce. So I think colleges are basically for fun and to prove you can do your chores, but they're not for learning. I want to make sure Tesla recruiting does not have anything that says requires university, because that's absurd. But there is a requirement of evidence of exceptional ability. Like, you just can't, if you're trying to do something exceptional, they must have evidence of exceptional ability. I don't consider going to college evidence of exceptional ability. In fact, ideally you dropped out and did something. I mean, obviously, you know, we just look at, like, you know, Gates is a pretty smart guy, he dropped out. Jobs, pretty smart, he dropped out. You know, Larry Ellison, smart guy, he dropped out. I'm like, obviously not needed. Did Shakespeare even go to college? Probably not. Making all the children go in the same grade at the same time, like an assembly line. You know, because some people love English or languages, some people love math, some people love music, and they have different abilities at different times. It makes more sense to cater the education to match their aptitudes and abilities. So I think that's one principle.
I think Steve Jobs said the biggest problem with the American schooling system is that the American parent has left and stopped being involved in the school or their child's schooling. They've sort of become like the great outsourcers. They've almost outsourced everything. This is a huge form of neglect. So the child's Christian education is left to the pastor. The child's schooling is left to the school or the university. If any problems arise from that, the child's sent to a psychologist. The psychologist then can dish out all kinds of drugs, from Ritalin to whatever else. If the child does not fit the mass manufactured format of schooling. So a parent cannot be a great outsourcer of their child's schooling. This is a huge form of neglect, and parents know actually very little what is going on in their child's life, especially in schools, especially when it comes to things like bullying.
Another is that it's important to teach problem solving.
I mean, it's actually kind of funny, you know, if you think of, like, what is education? Like, you're basically downloading data and algorithms into your brain. And it's actually amazingly bad in conventional education, because, like, it shouldn't be like this huge chore. Like, the more you can gamify the process of learning, the better. But I think just in general, like, conventional education should be massively overhauled, and I'm sure you very much agree with that. But I mean, the analogy that I sometimes use is, like, you've seen, like, Batman, like the Chris Nolan movie, like the recent one, and it's pretty freaking awesome, right? And you've got incredible special effects, great script, multiple takes, amazing actors, and great sound, and it's very engaging. But if you were to instead say, okay, that even if you had the same script, so at least it's the same script, and you said, okay, now that script, instead of having movies, we're going to have that script performed by the local town troupe. Okay, and so in every small town in America, if movies didn't exist, they would have to then recreate The Dark Knight.
Right.
You know, with like home sewn costumes and, like, you know, jumping across the stage and not getting their lines quite right, and not really looking like, you know, the people in the movie, and no special effects. And I mean, that would suck. It would be terrible.
That's right. Very.
That's education.
That's education.
Generally, you want education to be like as close to a video game as possible, like a good video game. Like, you do not need to tell your kid to play video games. They will play video games on autopilot all day. So if you can make it interactive and engaging, then you can make education far more compelling and far easier to do. So you really want to disconnect the whole grade level thing from the subjects. Allow people to progress at the fastest pace that they can or are interested in each subject. It seems like a really obvious thing. I mean, I think like most teaching today is a lot like vaudeville, where and as a result, just not that compelling. It's like somebody standing up there and lecturing to you, and they've done the same lecture several years in a row. They're not necessarily all that engaged or in doing it. Picking kind of a problem and then using various educational tools to solve that problem, like using math or physics or economics to solve that problem, is far more engaging than teaching the tools.
A few years ago, SpaceX founder Elon Musk approached South African entrepreneur and educator Josh Don to teach his children at his own private school, the Ad Astra. Musk's objective was to gamify the education experience and teach his children fundamental skills in problem solving. Today, the Ad Astra model of learning is being scaled up in the form of an amazing online program known as Synthesis, which is looking to reinvent the wheel and bring quality education to every child in the world. In this video, we'll find out more about Synthesis and what it could mean for the future of your children. You see, since Elon became a father, he's been extremely worried about his children not receiving the kind of quality education that would prepare them for the real world. He believes that the current education system is merely an assembly line where children are fed with useless information, something that does not impress him. Don, who specializes in working with gifted children and curriculum design, understood Musk's concerns regarding this outdated system, a system that is still being used by governments and states all over the world today. The two gentlemen had an enriching conversation about transforming learning into something more meaningful, and that's how the Ad Astra was born. In this school, there are no grades or age grouping. The Ad Astra institution believes that grouping by age does not work because kids possess different aptitudes and interests that can change with time. The school focuses mainly on problem solving rather than learning the tools needed to solve these problems. Because what's the point of learning a tool if you don't understand what the problem is in the first place and how to go about solving it? As the school grew in size, its popularity spread far and wide, especially with families and residents living in California. They began applying with the hope of securing a spot for their children. Word of its accomplishments soon reached the ears of Chrisman Frank, an educational software developer who specialized in educational resources involved in the learning process. At the time, Frank was an engineer with Class Dojo, an app that enhances communication between parents and teachers. He was also involved in a partnership with Stanford's Project for Educational Research that scales. The partnership involved creating a video series regarding the growth mindset concept, which believes in the idea that intelligence, much like physical strength, is acquired over time through practice. The series was watched by more than 10 million kids worldwide. And this got Class Dojo's founders interested in other ideas that they could deliver in such a scale and magnitude. So, about 4 years ago, Sam Choudhary, CEO and co-founder of Class Dojo, had dinner with Josh Don. During the conversation, they decided that they would visit the Ad Astra school. Frank was very impressed with what he found, but what blew him away the most was one particular class at the Ad Astra called Synthesis. In this class, students would be engaged in complex and demanding team games. The activities, which were created by Don himself, consisted of analyzing simulations, case studies, and game-based challenges. The purpose of this class was to stimulate the students to develop their own problem-solving skills while still making the entire learning process fun. Frank was mesmerized. He'd never seen a group of students so invested and excited about their education.
I'm passing my leadership to Zeke. Zeke, you're not the leader.
So what's going on there?
Well, I assessed the situation because I knew Zeke is better with condensed or under pressure situations. because I used to work with him in constellations, and when there was short of time, he would think of these amazing plans. He's just better with under pressure situations or with louder kids.
But while he was impressed by this class, it also made him very concerned and sad. He knew that he wasn't able to give his children such an immersive learning experience like this. However, a few years later, Frank would finally get his opportunity. During the COVID-19 pandemic, he met up with Don, and the two decided it was about time they launched a new education platform that could disrupt the field of education. This new platform would be called Synthesis, like the amazing class he had seen a few years ago. Frank became the CEO and Don became the creative director. The objective of this platform was to take what the Ad Astra did with Synthesis and scale it up so that it could become accessible to all students, not just Musk's children and those of SpaceX employees. Josh Don also left SpaceX to co-found the Astronova, a virtual institution modeled from the Ad Astra model that had full-time tuition starting at $31,500. This independent school was a scaled-up model of the Ad Astra that offered excellent learning strategies to a larger audience. Parents were able to enroll their children and pay an annual fee, but with all the classes being held online. As for Synthesis, the team hoped it could scale the most intriguing aspects of both the Ad Astra and the Astronova to make it a transformational experience for all kids regardless of their location in the world. Frank was also concerned about another thing. You see, when he first encountered Synthesis, it was a school solely for Elon's kids as well as other kids whose parents were working at SpaceX. The question is, how would average kids respond to the program if it was put right in front of them? Would they find it too complex? What Frank quickly discovered was that the Synthesis program wasn't complex at all. Other kids from all walks of life enjoyed it as well, just as much as the Ad Astra children. Similar to the Ad Astra and the Astronova, the Synthesis program will not rely on age segregation and grades, nor does it provide courses in differentiated subjects. As Frank says, the Synthesis program will remain true to its roots by creating fields of knowledge that foster teamwork and problem solving. Because that's what Frank believes is the key to getting things done in this world. There's no reward for being the best engineer. You have to fit in all these other systems and all these other people. So Synthesis gives kids the chance to do all the complex thinking that's missing from the traditional curriculum we grew up with. The online platform strongly believes in one of Socrates' most famous quotes: "Education is not the filling of a vessel, but the kindling of a flame." This is the basis of the Socratic method, which is often considered to be the opposite of the traditional assembly line model of education that most of us went through growing up. In the Socratic method of education, students are put in a classroom, but they go through the education process as a dialogue. They're also involved in team-building activities designed to urge them to confront the unknown. The teacher works hand in hand with the student, instead of teaching them, to find their own way towards certain conclusions and understandings. Since it started, Synthesis has distanced itself from the assembly line model and leaned more towards the Socratic model to increase student engagement and success. These efforts have largely focused on Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, which states that there are different types of intelligence that can be learned. And lastly, Synthesis uses the gatekeeper concept, which believes that assessment should move away from the simple pass and fail structure and become more diagnostic. Besides promoting student engagement, Synthesis also spearheads advancements in modern technology by making learning more hands-on, more distributed, and super fun. It also ensures that the learning experience is not limited to a physical space. Ana Lorena Fabrega, an educational entrepreneur who is one of the newest recruits at Synthesis, describes the education process at Synthesis as follows. Imagine a virtual playground where kids get to make tough decisions and develop the instincts and cognitive tools and collaboration skills to deal with complexity, all while having a blast. Because learning can and should feel like playing a fun game. Miss Bogart went on to describe how the educational philosophy at the institution was one of a kind. A typical class environment consists of putting students into team games with very minimal instructions beforehand. The children then have to use their problem-solving skills and powers of observation to figure out what the game is all about. In the meantime, the teacher will monitor the students and ensure that they stay on task. Once the task is completed, their teacher will guide them towards having a discussion about it afterward. For example, students will join a Zoom call with Ms. Bogart. At the beginning of the Zoom call, most students will be nervous and anxious about getting the right answers. Right away, Ms. Bogart assures the students that Synthesis is not like a regular school. There are no grades involved, and that the students are not going to be split up based on their age. Immediately, the students loosen up and they participate more. As Ms. Bogart declares, Synthesis is a community of problem solvers. It's a platform where students can try new things without being shunned, a place to experiment regardless of failure or success, and overall, a hub to learn, to share, and to laugh.